Right, so I think I've gone over most of the content that people need. So now I think it's important for us to go over how you might approach answering these questions. So what I'm going to do in these series of videos moving forward. So here I have part A, I believe, digital devices, and I have short answer questions on these. So for example, I've stuck to 2, 3, and 4 markers, right? So here we have a 3 marker, here we have another 3 marker, so on and so forth. So most of these short answer questions are going to be 2, 3, and 4 markers. There might be 1 and 2, 5, and 6 markers, but I'll try and avoid those for now. So I'm going to be doing short answer questions first for one topic. Then I'll be doing the longer answer questions, so 6 to the 12, so from 6 markers to 12 markers. And then I'll move on to, for example, part B. I think it's going to be networks or something like that. And then I'll do short answer questions, long answer questions. Next section, short answer questions, long answer questions, so on and so forth. And I'll do that for as many of them as I can before you guys have to do your exam in May, I believe. So stay tuned, and I hope it's useful for you guys. All right, let's get cracking. First question. Anderson is an accountant hired by companies to help with financial tasks. He works from home and travels around the country visiting clients. He uses a laptop computer for personal and work-related tasks. He has confidential information stored on his laptop, which includes personal and financial information. Anderson uses a username and password to restrict access to his laptop. Describe one other method Anderson could use to restrict access to his laptop. This is a nice, easy one. So how would I start doing this? It simply says describe. So what does describe mean? For this one, I would say state first and then say how it's going to be beneficial to Anderson to use that thing. So straight away, it says he uses username and password to restrict access to his laptop. The other thing I can think of straight away, because my laptop has a fingerprint sensor, I know that biometrics is a possibility. So I would state biometrics, right? Yeah, so I typed this off screen because my typing was horrible. So biometrics could be used. Then I would specify which type of biometrics. I would say fingerprint could be used. And how does this work? So you normally want to describe quickly. For 3 marks, you're going to want to state and maybe describe how it works. So how does a fingerprint sensor work? How do biometrics work in general? Even if it's a facial recognition scanner, an iris scanner, fingerprint, it doesn't matter. It works in more or less the same way. So previous save data is compared each time Anderson tries to log in to his PC. What that means, every time Anderson tries to log in, because he already saved the biometric data onto the PC. So my laptop, I have a fingerprint sensor. So the first time I set my laptop up, just like your iPhones and your Android phones, it asks you to save your fingerprint details. And what that does, it saves that to some database on your phone. And every time he turns his laptop on and every time he tries to unlock the laptop with his fingerprint, it will check his current fingerprint being placed on the fingerprint sensor versus what has been stored before. The benefits of this is that no one else can get into his laptop because, as we know, fingerprints are very unique. No 2 people in the world have ever had the same 2 fingerprint patterns, right? So what did I say? Fingerprint previous data saved is compared each time Anderson tries to log into his PC. If the data saved previously does not match the current finger on the scanner, the laptop will not be unlocked. Well, this is just one method. I'm going to try and list a few more I can think of quickly, but this is how I would go about answering this question. So biometrics could be used, and the biometrics that I would use, for example, is a fingerprint. Previous saved data is compared each time Anderson tries to log into his PC. If the data saved previously does not match the current finger on the scanner, so if Anderson's son, wife, daughter, who friend tries to log into his PC, it just won't work. So this is a very, very, very effective way to restrict access to his laptop. Now, another thing you might have to think about is there is physical access as well. They didn't specify which one, but we can make the assumption that it's not going to be direct physical access, but we can put an answer for that as well, because it says Anderson uses username and password. So ideally, you want to find an alternative to using a username and password. And in this case, biometrics would work fine. The next thing I can think about, because I mentioned it earlier, physical access could also be used to restrict, obviously, access to the laptop. And again, what this means, Anderson is working on his laptop at home. He's working on it when he travels. He has personal details on there. He has financial details on there of companies, of other people. Ideally, you want to have this locked away so not any and everyone or everyone can have access to it. A really good method of doing this is having physical access restricted. This means having it in a locked room with a padlock on the door or a latch on the door where he can lock it with a key or with whatever means he sees fit. So physical access could be an answer as well. So physical access could be used to restrict access to the laptop. The laptop could be kept in a room in his house, for example, with a locked doors locked door. Yep. Anything along these lines where once it's kept in a locked room with a locked door and only he has access to it, that's a perfectly fine answer as well because they didn't specify. However, we can make the assumption that it's an alternative to this. But this is also a good alternative if physical access to the laptop is important. Because what if he has stuff stored on there and someone else getting access, just physical access to the laptop can destroy that data, then it's detrimental to him, right? Now, the last one I would use, many of you guys use this on your phone as well, two-factor auth or authentication, two-factor authentication, right? So first of all, again, we state the thing that we wanted. So two-factor authentication could also be used. Always try and use fully fledged sentences. I'm only trying to be shorthand here because I'm on YouTube and I'm trying to be move as quickly as I can, but I wouldn't recommend that for you guys. Two-factor authentication could also be used. And what is two-factor authentication again? So two-factor authentication is a process of using multiple forms of verification or validation to ensure that you are who you say you are. For example, right? Username and password would be used to log in initially. So username and password would be used to log in initially. Did I spell that right? Would be used to log in initially. However, before he can gain full access to the system, he also has to enter a specific code sent to his mobile phone or email, for example, right? So this is typically how it works. So when I have to log into the PlayStation app or the PlayStation website, I put my email address and password in. I also get a text message sent to my phone saying this is your one-time code, or I have a thing sent to my email saying this is your one-time code. That's what two-factor authentication is, because you have to authenticate authenticate yourself twice, which is to say I am who I say I am because I have the username and password number one, and then this random code has been sent at some arbitrary time to some number that was previously saved or some email that was previously saved, and only you should have that number. And when you put that number in, that again tells the system, yes, I am who I say I am. Because sent to his mobile phone or email. Entering this would then give a person's name, Anderson, would then give Anderson full access to his system. SYSTEM. Okay. So these are the three answers I would use. Let me just quickly go over them. This video is going to be quite a long one. Biometrics, state what the thing is you want to use. So in this case, I've stated biometrics. Give a brief description of what biometrics is and then how you would use it in this case. Again, physical access is a bit simpler. There's not really much you can say about that one. So once you restrict physical access to the laptop, so people cannot physically go and touch the laptop and pick it up, all right? Two-factor authentication, again, state what it is. State the thing, state roughly how it works, and then how Anderson will use it for his system. So that's the first question there. Answered question one. Let's see. Let me actually get rid of these lines. Make it a bit neater. All right, question two. Where are we? Josie is a student on a graphics design course at Swindon College. As part of her course, she has to manipulate and edit high-resolution images. Josie uses a range of devices to complete her assignments. Josie's new laptop has a pre-installed operating system. That just means it comes with the operating system installed. That's what pre-installed means. Prerequisite just means before. Describe the role of the operating system in memory management. Okay, so every operating system does memory management in more or less the same way. They don't use the same techniques, but they manage memory, and how they manage memory might differ slightly. So Windows 10 versus Linux versus macOS might differ slightly, but it's still memory management. And the base explanation would be exactly the same. So don't think about what operating system it is, just describe memory management. And again, With IT stuff, as I've said many times in the past, memory management, it's in the name. It obviously manages memory, but roughly how does it do that? You have to describe the role of the operating system in doing that. So I think rather than writing the answers while I'm recording, I'll write the answers first and then go over it and explain how, why, what, and all of that stuff. All right. So again, describe the role of the operating system. So the program is opened by the user or the program opens in the background. It really doesn't matter how it's done. The operating system, OS means operating system, decides how much RAM, random access memory, the program needs. So I open Grand Theft Auto 5 on my PC. It needs roughly 8 gigabytes or 10 gigabytes of RAM. It will take that from what is present. It then allocates the blocks of memory needed by that application. Again, Grand Theft Auto 5 needs roughly 8 gigabytes. I have 16. It takes 8 from the 16. Okay? If and when another program is opened, that should also be allocated its own blocks of memory. So let's say I open OBS, that's a random program again, to start streaming Grand Theft Auto 5 to YouTube, right? That needs 1 gigabyte of RAM. I had 16 initially, 8 was taken by Grand Theft Auto 5, 1 is going to be taken by OBS, maybe another 1 or 2 by some random other things, right? If and when another program is opened, that should also be allocated its own blocks. Remember, the blocks cannot be shared. It must have its own as to not cause conflicts with the program. So sometimes programs might overwrite each other if memory management isn't done properly. So imagine the same 8 gigabytes that GTA 5 takes up. The 1 gigabyte needed for OBS goes and tries to take one from GTA 5's 8 gigabytes. And we're going to have conflicts. The program is going to crash. It's going to overwrite stuff. It's going to be chaos, right? I don't believe this is a part of Unit 1, but I'll mention it anyway because I just think it's important. So virtual memory used when RAM is full to allow for swapping to take place. So what that means simply, when my 16 gigabytes is full, my operating system will say, okay, well, you have an SSD that has hundreds of gigabytes free. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple gigabytes from your SSD temporarily. I'm going to hold, let's say, 16 gigabytes from your 200 free on your SSD. And I'm going to use that as virtual memory. Virtual meaning not real. Memory just meaning temporary holding space, right? I'm going to swap stuff in and out of that. It's going to be a bit slower than RAM, but at least stuff is going to work. At least you can open more stuff. At least it will run. At least it will not overwrite each other. It's a much better solution than simply closing stuff, right? So that's how that works. So this is how I would approach answering this kind of question again. And question number 3. Okay, Miguel owns a company that produces a software for primary school children. He works in an office with other programmers to do this. They use PCs in the office, and Miguel uses a laptop when visiting schools to demonstrate the software to the children. Each device has a graphical user interface and optional command line interface, so CLI. So GUI, again, means graphical user interface. CLI means command line interface. A single user multitasking operating system. A hard drive, HDD. Explain the purpose of the user interface. Now, all of this was just to ask one simple question. Explain the purpose of the user interface. Now, what I've done in the past is I've jumped ahead and I've said, oh, I don't need to read all of this because they are only asking about this one thing at the very end. That works sometimes, but I do not recommend doing that because at times they will put some random details in the middle of a question somewhere that might help you to answer the question fully or properly. Now, for this one, it's only 2 marks. So for this one, I would say, okay, fine. But as a rule of thumb, please make sure you read every single thing. It doesn't take that long to read. That was like, what, 30 seconds, a minute, and I have everything I need to answer this question now. All right, so this allows the user to communicate with the system quite simply. It allows you to enter commands, move your mouse, type on your keyboard, so on and so forth. It allows user to navigate the system. So navigate, communicate, interact with the system using WIMP, W-I-M-P. So that's Windows. So as you can see here, this is not Windows, the operating system, but Windows as in each program opens up in a new window. Icons, so those shortcuts you see on your desktop, your shortcuts you see on your taskbar, those are icons. Some of these are icons as well. So rather than saying, for example, paste, right? It says paste underneath, but as you can see, it's one piece of paper over another piece of paper, right? Those are icons. Menus, I'm going to click on File. And when I click on File, I have a whole menu that comes up. And then we have pointers. So simply your mouse pointer moving around the screen, and I can click on things, move them around, close them, minimize, open, so on and so forth. A user-friendly method for user to communicate stroke interact with the system. That's it. This is only 2 marks. So before you jump and start answering questions again, look at the amount of marks that the question gives. If it's 2 marks, my rule of thumb is relatively 2 short sentences, and that should be fine. Obviously, when writing, this is going to seem a lot more, but regardless, I'm being overboard with these answers, right? So, for example, for question 1, I believe I gave you guys 3 different answers for question 1. You don't need to give 3 different answers. I should have probably said that before. You only need to give 1 answer. I mean, it did say describe 1. I gave 3 answers because I wanted to give you guys options. If you don't remember one option, or if you're not too sure how to explain one option properly, choose from one of these if that's something that comes up, and then you're good to go. All right, question number 4. So the laptop has many utility programs installed. So we have utility programs. Well, I'll skip that for now. It's fine. Explain the purpose of the 2 given utility programs. So disk cleanup, and we have software firewall. So first and foremost, what does disk cleanup do? And then what does firewall do? We're just saying what it does, explaining the purpose is saying what it does, and that's it. So let's jump onto disk cleanup first. So a firewall in general, right? So we have software firewalls, and in contrast to that, because we have software something, in most cases we have the hardware of that as well. So software firewall, those are the programs installed on our PCs. So they normally come with stuff like Kaspersky, AVG, Norton, right? So those are the software firewalls that we have. They're also hardware firewalls, but simply define a firewall first, and I think that should be fine. A firewall monitors network traffic, so both incoming and outgoing traffic. So anything that comes into your network, anything that goes out of your network. So when you're sending and receiving stuff, if it sees suspicious traffic, it will try to block the traffic. So prevent unauthorized access, prevent someone from getting access to your files or your system. That's what it typically does. Where's the next question? Did I delete it? Oh, disk cleanup was the first one, actually. Cleans up the disk by removing temporary files, or the unwanted files. These files are created by programs and features of the operating system when it carries out certain tasks. Typically, when you delete something, it goes to recycle bin and stays there. Disk cleanup will get rid of some of that. When you use the internet and your browser downloads web pages temporarily by caching, not CASH, but CACHE, cache. It just holds it temporarily somewhere because it needs it to work properly, it needs it to work faster. So when finished, most operating systems, for example, Windows, will still have those temporary files saved somewhere. Disk cleanup will then remove those files. So if I do on my laptop now disk cleanup, just to show you what this randomly looks like, I have a lot of stuff in my recycle bin. When it decides to come up, disk cleanup here. And as you can see, I have 1.83 gigabytes worth of stuff I need to get rid of. This is the disk cleanup operation app here. And if I click on clean up system files, this is going way overboard. But just so you guys have some context as to why we choose these answers, okay? This might take a few seconds. Here we go. And when I do clean up system, I now have 2.31 gigabytes worth of temporary stuff sitting there, not needed, not doing anything, but the operating system needed it before to do some work that it was doing. So that's what this cleanup is all about. And again, a firewall, it monitors your network traffic, both incoming and outgoing traffic. It sees if there's suspicious traffic and it tries to block that suspicious traffic. So they are intuitive, so it means that they're easy to learn, as they're all more or less the same thing. So when I'm on a Linux laptop or Windows laptop like I am on here, or I'm on a macOS laptop, the red X is the close button for everything. So the tiny minus sign is a minimize button, and the maximize and expand button is the same thing. So you more or less, once you learn one, you have an idea of how to use all the others, right? It's easy to use and less time consuming, as I do not need to remember complex commands. No, I can do every single thing I'm doing on using my mouse and keyboard with the command line. This is the command line interface here. So for example, I can go to my downloads folder here and I can see everything I have in here, right? I can also do that from here. And if I'm not mistaken, if I do ls, no, that's for Linux. See, I don't even remember it. that's a perfect example on Linux to list all the items in my directory. I do ls. In this, I think it might be, yeah, there we go, dir for directory. And I can go cd downloads. So I'm in my downloads folder on the left here, and I'm also in my downloads folder on the right here. Now look how easy it was for me to get to downloads and see everything I have, and know that this is a Word document because it has the tiny Word icon. I know that this is either a PDF or a web page because it's open in Chrome. This is a PowerPoint because it has a PowerPoint symbol there. I'm in my downloads folder over here, and to actually see all the items in my directory, I type dir for directory, and look what it gives me. Activity2.rtf. Now it does give me more or less the same information. So these two windows are showing exactly the same thing, but this is a lot more user friendly for most people. I use Windows every single day, and I've used it every single day for the last 15 years, and I still didn't remember straight away how to do that action. However, using my GUI rather than the CLI, I was able to get here and get the information I wanted within seconds. All right, so those are some of the benefits. Again, it's more accessible is another one. Users with physical impairments can edit a GUI to make it more suited to them. So people with visual impairments, for example, can have high contrast text in certain apps. So that's correct. So let's say I were in, where was I? My downloads thing. I can actually zoom this up. So let me open this again. I can make the text over here larger as well, but it's so much easier to do it over here. Let's say I am not able to read this because I actually do have very bad eyesight. I can zoom all the way in, and I can see clearly that this is activity 2 and it's a Word document. Clearly that this is some form of PDF thing, but over here it's not as easy to do that, all right? So I'll leave it as those for now because I don't think you need much more than that. Oh, I've given you 4 of them. Yeah, 4 of them should be okay. Oh, increased efficiency, as I can see what is happening in real time on the window present. Now, many times I can have, let me open another window here. So let's say I had 2 Word documents open here, right? And I wanted to see what was going on in both of them. I could just split the windows like this, and I could have both my documents and I can see in real time what's going on. If I were to do that with the command line, it wouldn't be as easy, even though I can have 2 of them right next to each other. The real-time updates won't be as noticeable. They won't be as good because I can open a Word document from here and type in it, but then doing another one over here would just be messy. Okay, so let's just leave it at that. The GUI is much better for most people because of these reasons. Now, there are many more reasons, but I think giving you guys 4 should be okay. It says to explain 2 of them. I've given you 4, so hopefully you remember them, and any more that you can think of would be good as well. Joseph is a student in the final year of a 3-year graphic arts course. At the beginning of his course, he was given a second-hand laptop to use when completing college assignments. The laptop is now 5 years old and Joseph is thinking of replacing it. The operating system on the laptop is no longer supported by the manufacturer, which may cause security issues. Explain 2 issues other than security that may arise from using a 5-year-old laptop. We cannot mention anything to do with security because it's specified here. Explain 2 other issues other than security, okay? So what I have here, we're going to have, in many cases, hardware incompatibility. The old operating system will not have the new device drivers for the new hardware devices. What are device drivers? So device drivers are tiny pieces of program that sit in between hardware and software, and they allow for the hardware to communicate with the software. For example, I think I've mentioned this in a few videos. Your mouse, your keyboard, your mobile phone, your printer, they all connect to your computer using a USB cable to the computer's USB port. The computer knows that my keyboard allows me to do stuff like this. My mouse allows me to highlight, right click, move my cursor on screen. My printer allows me to print onto paper. Even though they're all connected to the same port, the computer knows which one should do which. That's where device drivers come in. The pieces of software drive that device. It tells the computer the capabilities of what this device can do based on the inputs it's getting. So on my keyboard, when I press the Windows button, this comes up. I'm going to press the escape button. It goes away. On my mouse, I'm going to right click. This comes up. I'm going to highlight, so drag my mouse across. This happens. So that's what device drivers do. Next, we have limited storage. Older devices such as laptops tend to have less storage well, that's supposed to be compared to newer devices. Some programs, such as games, will need more storage. And again, I'm going to go back to GTA 5, right? I believe GTA 5 and like games like Call of Duty, then they require on the Xbox and PlayStation 150 gigabytes worth of storage. When I was about 12, 13, I got my first computer and it only had 20 or 40 gigabytes of hard drive space. 20. Now, nowadays, most mobile phones come with in excess of 64 or 128 gigabytes of storage. So imagine I still had that computer and I tried to install something like GTA 5. It just wouldn't work. Not even Windows 10 would work. Just trying to install the operating system wouldn't work. So that's going to be incompatible there as well because of storage. Older laptops also tend to have slower processing hardware. So CPU, which is a central processing unit, and or GPU, the graphics processing unit, limits the newer programs that need higher spec computers. Again, my very first computer had an Intel Pentium 4, which was about 2 gigahertz or something like that. My mobile phone, and that was a single core processor again. My mobile phone now has an octa core processor. It has 8 cores versus a computer I had years and years ago. The GPU in my phone is able to do much more, even export video surprisingly, compared to that first computer I had. So older, slower processing hardware limits the type of programs that I can run as well. And probably the main one that you're going to come up against is software incompatibility. So newer programs will need certain features from the new operating systems. As a result of this, some programs will not work or they will have limited functions. Now, when designing programs, right? When a programmer creates something in Python, C++, Java, they're actually making use of stuff the operating system can already do. They don't design or add anything to the operating system. They say they make use of what the operating system can do. They simply use that programming language to give the computer or the operating system the commands that it should follow. Now, if I designed, think about it like this. If I design an app for iOS, I think it's 13 or 14 now. I designed my app for iOS 14, and you try to run it on an iPhone 6, which is stuck on iOS, I don't know, 8 or 10, something like that. The features that I need to make use of are only in iOS 14. So they simply won't work in whatever the iPhone 6 is stuck on, right? So that app, it might install, but when you open it and you try to do an iPhone 11, an iOS 11 specific thing, it just won't work. Now, this only needed 2, but again, I've given 4. So you guys can pick, choose, and refuse the one you want to use. Next question says, Joseph is a student in the final year of a 3-year graphics course. Unsupported operating system. Okay, this is a slightly different question. At the beginning of his course, okay, I'm going to skip that part, and I don't recommend you guys do this. I'm only going to do that because this is the same question as before. However, the final part says, explain 2 security issues that might arise from using an unsupported operating system. Now, think of it that just this is going to be unsupported software essentially, right? So we're going to dive into that now. So we have no security patches given. This means fixes to the operating system we're not giving. So holes, that should be holes, or vulnerabilities are still there. Whenever an operating system or any piece of software is created, there are typically security issues or holes in the system that the operating system manufacturer, so Microsoft or Apple, they tend to release an update or a patch later on to try and fix those issues or those problems. If you've had this operating system for 5 years and it's now unsupported, whatever holes or vulnerabilities were in the system at the end of the support timeline is still going to be there. Okay. Newer antivirus software or newer malware software or just malware, anti-malware, sorry, might not be compatible. This leaves the system open to attacks from newer malware, which the older anti-malware cannot protect against. Quite simply, think of this. I'm going to use the word virus generally. If you have an older system that's unsupported, the newer antiviruses, let's say, what's it called, AVG 2021, might not work on a laptop from 2010, for example, right? Because of that, it won't pick up on the new viruses. Again, I'm using viruses loosely here. It won't pick up on the new viruses, and as a result of that, will not be able to protect against those new viruses. Finally, hackers know the holes or the vulnerabilities in the system that has not been patched or updated for 5 years. So if you know that there's a hole in a fence that leads to a bank and you can steal millions of pounds from the bank and never get caught, I mean, most people would do that, right? So hackers, they know the hole in the system and they know how to get through that hole, and it's never been fixed because you now have an unsupported operating system. Then it's going to be a lot easier for them to get into the system and hack it, right? And okay, so this one, Maria is a scientist working as part of a team studying the British weather. An unmanned data logging system. This just simply means that no human needs to be there for it to do what it's doing. So unmanned. They might be somewhere else controlling it, but they're not in the same physical location. An unmanned data logging system has been set up in the mountains of Scotland to monitor weather conditions such as temperature and rainfall. Okay, let's stick to those. Explain what is meant by the term data logging. And I have here automated systems like embedded systems automatically capture data from attached sensors. Because we're looking at temperature, I could use what's it called, a thermometer, something like that, if it's even spelled correctly. And rainfall, that would be a moisture sensor, probably. SENSOR. So that's going to be a moisture sensor or a thermometer. The data is stored for future analysis. Again, 2 marks only. You only need a couple sentences. So again, an automated system like an embedded system, which automatically captures data from attached sensors, and the sensors that could be attached in this case, in this specific case, are thermometer for temperature and moisture sensor for rainfall. The data is then stored so it can be used for future analysis. Now, just adding a bit extra here, it's not needed for this question, but why would they use a data logging system? Because it's much safer. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be easier to operate, right? Imagine you need to get temperatures, a random one, temperatures of a volcano for some reason. Are you really going to send a whole human being down into a volcano so that they can record temperatures for, I don't know, 2, 3 months? They have to wake up and go there every single day for 2, 3 months. Or you're going to simply get some embedded system, some tiny device, maybe the size of a phone or just a normal desktop, stick it to one side of the volcano and have it record the temperatures. Every 1 minute, it will record the temperature, save it, and maybe even upload it to the cloud. So that way, we don't have to put a human life in danger to get the necessary information that we want. Now, this is the last question for this one. So Josie is a student on a graphics design course at Swindon College again. As part of her course, she has to manipulate and edit high resolution images. Josie uses a range of devices to complete her assignments. Josie is considering buying a laptop with a hard drive, HDD, hard disk drive, to complete her assignments. Explain why Josie may prefer to buy a laptop with a HDD hard disk drive rather than SSD solid state drive. So hard disk drive is the older technology, SSD the newer technology. So what I've done here is only 3 marks, only a couple sentences needed, I would say. Hard drive, so HDD is older technology, so it should be cheaper per gigabyte. Don't just say per cheaper, because I can spend £50 on an SSD and get an SSD. I can spend the same £50 and get a hard drive. However, the £50 will get me more storage, so more gigabytes on a hard drive than it would on an SSD. Okay, so we have to use the term or something along the lines of per gigabyte or for the amount of storage needed. Okay, so hard drive or hard disk drives are that's the older technology compared to SSD, and as a result of that, hard drives would be cheaper per gigabyte. Is how I would frame that sentence. Large size for graphics files because she's editing high quality images or high resolution images. So she will need more storage. Because she'll need more storage, and speed wasn't really something that they mentioned. So SSDs are really, really good for speed, not so great for the amount of storage you get per gigabyte compared to a hard drive. Nothing here mentioned speed. So we can assume that storage is going to be the most important thing. And because storage is going to be the most important thing, she's also a student, right? We can assume that students typically have limited resources, even though parents might get involved. Let's just assume that students have limited resources. She has X amount to spend on a laptop as a student. and that XML must get her everything she needs for that course. Hard drive would make a lot more sense for her because, again, it's cheaper per gigabyte, larger files can be stored, and she's a student. So that's how I would frame that answer there. That answers everything for the short answer questions for digital devices. I won't do any more short answer questions for digital devices. What I will do is move on to the long answer questions. So the 5, 6, 8, 10, and maybe even 12 markers for the same thing. I won't do as many questions. This was 9 questions. I'll probably do maybe 3 or 4 maximum because this was a very long video. So let me know what you guys think about this one. If it's helpful, let me know. Like, subscribe, comment, share. I'll be doing these anyway, but if this format helps, I'll be doing more of this format moving forward, not just for unit 1 or 2, but also other units in general.